Okay, the time is now 16 hours. So let us start. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tuan Le. I'm from Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden, and I'm a co-manager of this project GENTE. So now I would like to welcome everyone to our special sections on the energy communities for energy transitions. Basically, we would like to present our progress on the IRANET funded project called GENTE. And next slide, please, Ben. In today's section, we will have a number of presentations. So after my first introductions for the GENTE project, then we'll have about 5 presentations from various topics from different partners in the project. And we would like to inform you that we will present the presentation and then we will take the questions in the chat also, and at the end we will allocate a Q&A question and answer sections so that we can take all the questions all together at the end. All right, and so let us start with the first introduction to the GENTE project. So I will just give a very brief overview of what the project is about. So the title of the project is Distributed Governance for Green Energy Communities. So the acronym is GENTE. And this is a project funded within the Smart Energy Systems program of ERANET. And the project started last year, 1st of June, and expected to finish by 31st of May next year. Okay, next slide, please, Ben. So just to say a few words about the goals of the project, GENTE. So GENTE will aims to develop a toolbox to enable energy community development, allowing sharing, optimizing energy within community and between communities, as well as providing flexibilities to support the connected distribution grids. So the toolbox will include, for example, new algorithms, AI-based forecast, optimization and control, new services. For example, you have a flexibility services, you have aggregation service, you have a smart contracts, and so on. And so we focus as well on the technologies, for example, IoT platforms, distributed ledger technologies, advanced heat pump technologies, and so on. So all of these are driving forward the development of energy communities. And the toolbox will be demonstrated and validated at our 6 demo sites within the project in 3 countries. And results so far regarding this development will be presented in this special sections by partners in the consortium, as you will see in the agenda. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah. So with the communities and use cases that we have, as I mentioned, we have 6 demo sites. So in Switzerland, in Turkey, and in Sweden. So in each of the countries, we'll have 2 test sites. And so to develop, to test different technologies and services. GENTE have defined a number of use cases, as you see in this slide. So basically, it's about the grid flexibility provisions, self-consumption optimizations, peak load management, CO2 emission reductions, energy efficiency improvement, reduction in community energy costs, reduction in community energy consumptions, increase in community autarky or self-sufficiency, and also increase in the community federations. So those are the key use cases, and then some of them will be presented later on by our partners. And with the project partners, as mentioned here, we have four countries, and Switzerland, Turkey, Sweden, and Spain, with a number of academic partners, technology partners, and also several DSOs or need owners. Next slide, please. And yeah, so thanks to our funding agency from Turkey, from Spain, from Sweden, and also Switzerland. And so the project is coordinated and managed under the umbrella of Ethernet Smart Energy Systems. Yeah, so that's a very, very high level presentations from the GENTE project with the aims and partners and so on. So I would like to introduce or give words to our colleague, Laura, that will present. Can you go to this agenda, please? Yeah. Oh, sorry. The next one would be Ben Bowler, yes, from HSNU, and he will present about the energy communities for energy transitions, historical and future growth. So I give a word to you, Ben.
Thank you, Tuan. Yeah, and I'm responsible for managing the various windows on my laptop today, so I apologize for the short delay there. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ben Bowler. I'm a Senior Research Associate at Lucerne University of Applied Sciences and Arts, and we're involved in various aspects of the research in the project that Tuan's just described. One of them is looking at energy communities and how they have grown historically, and as part of that work, we're wanting to understand how they can grow in future, so that we can understand the relevance and the market potential and growth potential for the various technologies and solutions that are being developed in the GENTE project. So I want to share a little bit of information with you about that research over the course of the next 10 minutes or so. So what will I cover? Firstly, I want to just briefly mention the research aims and methodology associated with this work, and give you a little bit of information on the input data and nomenclature that we've been using. And then secondly, share with you the results of the work. So talk about some of the context and motivations for community creation, look at the historical development of communities within Europe, and we'll give some examples from some countries, and then talk about the next steps, which are the work that we will do around developing future scenarios. So briefly, the aims and methodology of the work. We wanted to look at how energy communities would grow in systems with high levels of renewable energy. This task, that was a task description, this task had some implicit objectives. Firstly, we wanted to understand what the ongoing and emerging needs of energy communities were and how these would change over time, really looking at the growth of communities and how their needs would change over time. And what we aimed to do was develop a number of trend lines and scenarios that would give us some insight into this. So primarily, this is a literature-based study looking at papers, understanding current numbers, understanding growth, the drivers for growth. However, it's also included some numerical research. COMET's project that I'll say a little bit about in a moment has published a very large and comprehensive database on community action initiatives across Europe. And so that was published and released during our work, which allowed us to also bring that resource into the work to supplement the literature study. If I just say a little bit about the COMET's inventory briefly. So here there's as I say, a very large database of initiatives. The definition of initiatives that are included in this database are quite broad. COMET's describe this as collective action initiatives, and that covers energy communities in really a very broad sense. It's a very comprehensive database that includes an inventory that's been peer reviewed, covering a large number of countries, and they've actually got up to 10,000 initiatives that are summarized and codified within that database. So while the focus for our research has been on literature and understanding the motivations for community growth and trying to project that into the future, the COMET's database has been a useful resource for validating what the literature, for cross-checking that with numbers. And so some of the graphs that I'll show you over the course of the next 10 minutes or so will use the data that was held in that database. It's important to mention that the Comets database covered a period of research, and that research for various countries finished around 2019, 2020, 2021. So when you look at the graphs that I share on the right side, it may show a drop in the number of communities, but that might be because data collection stopped, for example, in 2020, and so the numbers for 2021 weren't fully represented. So just bear that in mind when you see the results. So that's a little bit of an introduction on the aims and objectives. Now I'll talk more about some of the results. I'd like to start with the context for community creation. So this has been quite interesting. We've been trying to understand why communities form and what those motivations were for communities forming. And what we found is citizens will form energy communities where you see an existing strong tradition of citizen ownership. So there are various examples of this that can be seen around Europe. There's an image here shown of Germany. Germany is one of the countries with a strong tradition of social enterprise and community projects. What we see in contrast is other countries, for example, in Turkey, there's less of a history of forming energy communities or community initiatives, sorry. And this is the various drivers for this. One of the drivers is that countries may have negative perceptions of centrally planned economies or centrally planned initiatives. This can be seen in Turkey, it can be seen in other countries as well. And there's quite an interesting example on the right-hand side of this slide showing Germany. What you can see here is a demarcation between what was formerly East Germany and what was formerly West Germany. And you can see that there's been an influence, or the literature suggests that there's been an influence of the history associated with communism in East Germany, which has led to a difference in the cultural perception of community initiatives. And so what you can see in Germany is a difference in the growth of community initiatives, depending on whether you're looking at the former East Germany or the former West Germany. So that's quite an interesting context. There are also a range of motivations for community creation, and this table summarizes some of those motivations for community creation. We've done quite a lot of analysis looking at these. A number of these factors are important. Economic factors have been frequently identified as the most important factors, and you'll see this in some of the later slides that I share. Money really is an important motivator for encouraging people to set up communities. However, motivation related to the environment is important too, and the environmental constraints or the environmental motivations are becoming more important. In recent years, this has become more important relative to other factors. Social and political objectives are also important, things like community empowerment or well-being or health, social justice, and lastly, infrastructure is also an important factor. So that gives you a little bit of an understanding of some of the context and the motivations. I'll now show you a little bit of research results that focus on different countries and provide different case studies. So this is a graph that uses some of the data that's held in the Comets database. What you see here are two graphs that show community development, new communities that were formed over the period from 1990 to 2020, and that point about the data cutoff uncertainty is illustrated on the right-hand side. So the top graph shows growth with Germany. You can see Germany, community energy in Germany is a really dominant force in Europe. And the bottom graph shows the development of community energy initiatives with Germany excluded, and that allows you to see a little bit more detail of the other countries, less squashed in the bottom graph. So that gives you an overview, and we'll look at some of those countries in more detail. Just to say a few words on the historical development. So there was an initial growth phase, and you can see that on the previous slide. I'll share a little bit more on subsequent slides on that. So there's initial growth phase that you can see where there was a lot of financial support for renewable energy in the 1990s and 2000s, and that led to a surge in community energy initiatives. There are also stable policies, and this allowed people to overcome the high initial investment costs. What was often observed later on was a decline in renewable energy creation. This was due to various shifts in the political discourse. There may be removal of financial incentives. There may be changes to incentives or to regulations. Sorry, complexity and caps on feed-in allowances and so on also played a part in that. That's not the only story though, and there were some variations on that theme. I'll say a little bit more about this in a second, but you can also see different patterns. So, for example, in Sweden, France, Spain, and Turkey, they may have an existing low carbon energy mix, which may have led to a delay in the start of new community initiatives. There may be a cultural skepticism towards cooperative initiatives, as I've already mentioned. Or there might be a reliance on the welfare state, so there's less of a reliance on community-driven initiatives. Also, policy changes may lead to a different shape in the graph, and I'll show that shortly. I'll just very quickly talk about a couple of case studies here. Here in Germany, you can see a number of initiatives, government initiatives on the left-hand side marked corresponding with years, and you can clearly see from this research that the Renewable Energy Act, the EEG, from when it was first implemented to later successions, had quite clear correlation with the growth in energy communities, and this is really relating to feed-in tariffs and market premiums. So really a clear increase there. However, later on, there was a drop in energy communities as regulations shifted more towards larger, more market-driven initiatives. In the UK, a similar shape can be seen. So you can see a steep increase in the number of communities that were established. This is around the introduction of feed-in tariffs, which were the first support mechanism aimed at smaller scale renewable energy that happened in around 2010. What happened in 2015 was a change in government and then a significant rethinking of the support scheme. So a move towards contracts for difference, a move towards market-based measures, and this led to a decrease in the support for renewable energy, and hence there's a corresponding reduction in the number of new energy initiatives that were started or commissioned. And again, changes were led to a more sort of market-based approach, which supported larger initiatives, larger renewable energy investment, and less supportive of smaller communities. Netherlands is a little bit different. The story here is less about direct financial support and more about some of the regulatory aspects. So there was a net metering scheme which was introduced in 2004, and that allowed renewable energy to be validated or to be cancelled out against consumed energy, and so that reduced the tax burden associated with energy tariffs. A postal code scheme was introduced in 2013, and this encouraged local optimization of energy systems. There have been two recent changes to the legislation. There's a modified net metering scheme which will remove the net metering scheme which was introduced in 2004. And there's a new cooperative initiative which has been moved through Parliament, and the effects of that don't yet show in the numbers that I'm able to share on the screen. The last case study that I'd like to share is on Switzerland, and this is a different regulatory case again. Although the start of the graph is quite similar to the case, for example, in Germany or the UK, where you see a high level of support for renewable energy, in particular solar. What's happened later is more of a sustained market for energy communities, more of sustained growth. This has been supported by investment grants, but also most recently by the introduction of a regulatory concept called self-consumption communities, which has really encouraged people to think about optimization. For this particular regulation, it emphasizes the importance of the self-consumed kilowatt hour, and it encourages people, it allows people to realize that the self-consumed kilowatt hour is more profitable ultimately than one that's fed into the grid, and that has supported some of the mindset around community energy. Okay, I'd like to share just two more slides on future scenarios. So this is work that's still ongoing, and we don't yet have the trend lines for how energy communities will grow. There isn't a lot of published information on this. However, it's clear from research that's been done by, for example, ResCube, that community energy and collectives will play an important part. And this graph shows that around 16% of energy produced by citizens in 2050 could come from collective projects. So it's clear that energy communities will play an important part in the energy mix. When we look at future scenarios, the sorts of things that we think are important to consider, firstly, are market measures. Market measures, depending on how they're implemented, may favor investment in larger renewable energy schemes, but they may also favor large, more integrated energy communities, depending on how they're designed. It's clear from the research that we've done that regulation and the economic aspects of that regulation, also economic pressures to do with things like energy bills, will have an impact on the growth of communities. Something that's important that I haven't really touched on today is on messaging. There is some clear correlation between the growth of communities or the increase in incidence of communities in countries where effective messaging campaigns have taken place. And there wasn't time to talk about that today, but that's also an important factor that we've identified in literature. And finally, as I started off the presentation, describing local context is important. And in some countries, historical dependencies will affect the growth of energy communities. So finally, to finish off, just to summarize, so LECs are an established concept in the EU, and some of the data that we've been analyzing goes back as far as 1900. However, those new communities are very sensitive to various pressures, economic, legal, and regulatory pressures. And there's a clear difference that can be observed regionally based on where those policies are implemented and also how those policies are implemented. It's difficult to make EU-wide projections because of the diversity across different countries, but we aim to look in more detail at those policies and to look at how we can make those projections. However, some of the fundamentals include making sure that communities can benefit from the economic aspects of feed-in tariffs or other tariffs. It's important that financial incentives are provided, and it's important to make sure that policies are thought about in the long-term sense and are supportive of communities in the long term. Also important are the development of awareness campaigns that can boost awareness of the benefits of energy communities. Okay, that brings me to the end of the presentation. Welcome to ask questions at the end of the workshop today. Also, I'm available by email or on LinkedIn if you'd like to get in touch with me there. So I'll just put the agenda back up, Tuan. You're muted again. No, still muted. Just while you... Okay, it seems to be a technical difficulty with Tuan's microphone. I'll introduce the next speaker then. So I'd like to introduce Laura Zabala. She's speaking from R2M this afternoon, and she'll give an overview of the community toolkit that's being developed in GENTE, that Tuan mentioned in his... I'll just bring your slides up, Laura.
Hi everyone, as Ben said, I'm Laura Zabala from R2M. I'm an energy modeling and optimization engineering, and I will present you a bit more in detail what does the GENTE toolkit consist of, and also how we are going to validate this toolkit within the GENTE project. So to start with, first of all, I will introduce the GENTE toolkit and the different outcomes of the project that conform this toolkit. So, GENTE's overreaching mission is to create a distributed governance toolbox for local energy communities so that the communities can advance on a green energy transition. And for that, this toolbox is composed of different methodologies, services, and technologies that are developed or upgraded within the project, and that will, by all of them, confirm this toolbox. So to start with, within GENTE, some methodologies and guidelines are developed in order to help the different stakeholders of the community in different processes. For example, some guidelines will be developed in order to help on the creation of an energy community, also on how to arrange the federation of different energy communities, on the adoption of the GENTE tools. Also, some guidelines will be developed in order to help on establishing different incentive schemes within the community. And also, GENTE will develop a decision support tool that will help the community managers in some planning and decisions within the community. Apart from these methodologies, GENTE also develops some services. If you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah. The services that are developed within GENTE are aimed to the community managers so that they can offer these services to the communities and also to other external stakeholders. And the aim of these services is to create a basis for the integration into the grid service market and also in the trading market. And for that, as I mentioned, different services and also business models will be developed within the project. And together with all these services, also different technologies are developed or upgraded within the project. If you can go, okay, perfect. These technologies make use of data analytics for the forecasting and local optimization of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, distributed edge technology, and also edge processing. And together with the required hardware and platforms, different resources are developed within the project in order to provide autonomous energy management sources and also products or algorithms for the flexibility provision. And the aim of all these management optimizers and platforms is at overall to improve the energy efficiency within the community, to provide flexibility to the grid, and also to reduce the environmental impact that the energy communities have. So, yeah, all these innovations and outcomes of the GENTE project apply to different layers of the energy community. First of all, at the highest layer, the GENTE project considers the federation of different energy communities. So guidelines and methodologies will be developed in order to assess and help on this federation process. Also, these innovations are aimed at the community managers, providing governance platforms and tools that can help on the operation and management of the different assets and members of the energy community. And finally, we have the prosumer level, in which all the different platforms and tools are placed, and that will help on the management of the different energy assets within the community. So now I will explain how all these outcomes and exploitable results of the project will be validated within the different pilot sites that are in the project. So first of all, GENTE aims to prove aspects in different domains. So the following use cases have been defined. First of all, GENTE considers the grid flexibility provision. And for that, two different approaches are analyzed: the self-consumption optimization and the peak load management. Another use case related with the environmental impact is the reduction of the community CO2 emissions. Then we also have as a use case the improvement of the energy efficiency that will be approached as a reduction in the community energy costs and also as an increase in the community autarky or self-consumption. Then another of the use cases is the federation of the different energy communities. And finally, a co-design process that is going to be developed within the LEC, in which the aim is to introduce the user's needs and interest within the technical development of the different tools and incorporate this user view within the technical developments. So considering all these use cases, if we go to the next slide, we have done a mapping between all the exploitable results from the project that I have previously mentioned, together with all the use cases that are going to be validated, and also with the different pilots from the GENTE project. As Tuan has previously introduced, GENTE counts with 6 different pilots in 3 different countries that comprise both living labs with also real demo sites, real energy communities, and this offers us a wide variety of legislation and of background for the energy communities, and it will help on the validation of the different exploitable results and then on the scalability of this validation. So considering the mapping between all these aspects, we have defined a validation methodology. Here you can see the overview of this methodology together with the assessment process that we are going to follow. First of all, in order to validate the GENTE toolbox and all the different aspects that compose this toolbox, 3 different validation levels have been defined. First validation or verification level that comprise functional performance tests to verify that the deployment and integration is well done. And for that, different ICT and hardware key performance indicators have been defined. Then the next step in the validation will be a forecasting verification, in which the accuracy of the forecasting algorithms that are an important part of the GENTE toolbox will be assessed through also some key performance indicators. And finally, we have the validation of the different GENTE use cases. Here are considered all the use cases that I previously mentioned, and because of that, different key performance indicators will be used for the assessment: environmental, economic, energy, social, and also comfort KPIs. And this more technical methodology is enriched together with a social part, in which the user engagement aspects and also the co-design process will be evaluated through a set of social KPIs that have been defined also for the GENTE project. And then here we can see a summary of the targets of the GENTE project. First of all, GENTE aims to provide 2 new services to the DSO related with the grid flexibility provision. Also, GENTE aims to reduce the community CO2 emissions in up to 30%. And the user interaction and user engagement will be measured, taking into account the interactions with the platforms, also especially in the living labs. And finally, GENTE also aims at improving the community energy efficiency in up to 30%. So this was all. If you have any questions regarding any of the aspects, you can ask about it at the end of the session or through email. Thank you.
Tuan, you are still having problems with your microphone, so I'll move on to the next speaker. So the next speaker will be Essen Kunt. She's speaking from ReInGen this afternoon, and she'll give an overview of the IoT platform that's being developed in GENTE for community optimization and federation. So Essen, I'll just load your slides up and hand over to you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I think everybody can hear me well.
Yes.
Yes, great. I am the R&D project director at Rengen, and today I will introduce the GENTE's IoT stack for local community energy management. We are the developer of this IoT platform in the project, and we aim to achieve the distributed intelligence by this platform. Next 2 slides, please. The next one, please, Ben. Yes. Here is the technical objective at GENTE. We aim to develop and demonstrate the scalable technology for autonomous orchestration of electricity, heat, and e-mobility assets within and across communities based on IoT and edge technologies, and which will bring intelligence to distributed physical assets. And we also will take into consideration the data security, interoperability, and of course, privacy. Effectively managing these distributed energy assets requires a strong infrastructure for the communication and data management, which highlights the crucial importance of the integrated solutions. In particular, interoperability stands as a cornerstone for the orchestrating distributed energy assets, and it eliminates the pathway to a seamless, interconnected energy ecosystem. On the other hand side, data security and privacy emerge as crucial concerns that require constant vigilance and, of course, meticulous attention. Next slide, please. Yes, here, Lara already explained these layers, so I will be quick here, maybe just one contribution. When we examine the GENTE solution, it orchestrates different technology components and web services for seamlessly managing various systems and the distributed energy assets. For the successful management of all these assets and services, and of course use cases, we had to design a sophisticated, flexible IoT platform infrastructure. Next slide, please. Considering this GENTE multi-layer platform architecture, we designed this architecture and we adopt this approach through these requirements. As you see in the schema, there are several layers that incorporate one another. And at the bottom layer, there are several field devices such as EV charging stations, smart meters, and so on. To provide this bidirectional data communication, we have built a data acquisition layer consisting of IoT and virtual device adapters. When physical devices are involved, there is a big challenge to solve the problems at the cloud level. Therefore, it must be solved at the field level. That's why we position our engine IoT gateway to stream data with field units and execute some services in the local network. I will go on these details in our gateway in later slides. But finally, we created a data hub so that all GENTE services can access this data. We can position our services in the cloud as well as on-premise installations in the local network. And our partners who develop the mobile applications or provide execution of these optimization services thus obtain the data they need easily. Next slide, please. Yes, this is the high-level design of our IoT platform, and it fundamentally provides the vendor-agnostic data acquisition from physical energy assets in accordance with many different communication protocols. We also manage this data acquisition with the WebSockets that can be adopted from our partners or third-party web services via HTTP or RESTful API. And also on-premise installations can be executed in the local networks, and basically we aggregate and unify all collected data and share this data with other technology provider partners via a single API. And in the project, we provide data security and privacy at every layer with the anonymization and encryption. Next slide, please. Yes, another solution presented in the GENTE project is our re-engine IoT gateway. So unlike other dummy gateways, our IoT gateway acts as a mini computer in the fields, and it includes its own Raspberry-based processor. So it allows us to manage and achieve the edge intelligence, and it includes the software over it. So in the project, we managed to executing forecasting services developed by our other partners, and all these forecasting services will run on our devices. This Linux-based Raspbian operating system also makes it easy to collaborate with other partners, and this automation will be the energy management solution of the future. And therefore, in the scope of the project, it is very exciting for us to test our devices in these sophisticated different use cases. Next slide, please. Yes, we already looked at the different GENTE pilot sites, and there are 3 different ones: Turkey, Sweden, and Switzerland. And in the project, we will work on these showcases. And thank you very much. If you have any questions at the end of the session, you can ask or you can email us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esen, and I'll continue to save any further IT issues. We had in the program a speaker from Prosume who was due to speak now. Unfortunately, he's had some problems, has been delayed, and so is unable to speak this afternoon. If he manages to resolve those issues in the next 10 or 15 minutes, then he'll speak after Torbjörn. But here he is now. He's just joined, so that's good. Alex, you need to choose to share your video and audio, and then you'll join the panel.
It seems Alex is online.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So Alex, if you choose to share your audio and video, then you'll join the panel. We'll be able to see you, and we'll be able to share your presentation. Okay, while Alex is doing that, I propose that we change the agenda slightly. So Torbjörn is ready. So I'd like to introduce Torbjörn Assarsson. He joins us from Energy Save this afternoon. He will talk about heat pump technologies for energy communities. So Torbjörn, I'll just upload your presentation quickly here and get us to the first slide. So over to you. Thank you, Torbjörn.
Now there is an issue with audio for Torbjörn as well. Do you use any external microphone? Okay. Because my external microphone doesn't work, so I have to use the one from built-in in the laptop. So it seems to work.
Alex, do we have sound from you?
If you go to setting,
do you? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah. Okay. So while
Yes.
Torbjörn's now we'll switch
Okay.
back to
Now
the
we
original
begin.
agenda. And yeah. Okay. Just give me 1 second.
Give me a second. Maybe you might see the video.
Okay. Just sorry for the technical issues. Be there shortly. Okay, I think we're there.
Okay, can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I might have a bit of a lag. I'm at the conference actually. We are here in Rome. This is a conference regarding DSOs actually, so it's pretty much linked to energy. And yeah, so are you going on with the slides, Ben, or shall I do it? No, okay, you do it. Okay, fine. Yeah. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Alex Elia, President of Prosume. In GENTE project, we are working on the level of the smart contracts and interfaces to end users, prosumers. And the approach here is connected to the self-sovereign identity and privacy. So we want to value a lot what self-sovereign identity means and privacy. And because energy-related data is really important, and yeah, so the approach we are taking here is to provide tiny piece of software, little binaries, which can be installed on the meter devices, the submeters, routers, and help shaping the value of energy exchange regarding consumption, production, and also what is being then provided to the grid, fed to the grid. And on these, we are implementing a technology provided by a partner of us that helps us build a trust layer. Okay, I'm seeing. Okay, yes, this trust layer helps us maintain self-sovereign identity, so giving back control to end users and protecting their privacy and helping them build awareness. Next slide, please. And that's why we are partnering with Stichting Dina. It's a foundation from Netherlands, which is actually working with a couple of partners from the Dutch embassy that we are having here at the event I'm right now at. And the tools are enabling us to establish this layer of confidentiality and at the same time building smart contracts which are human understandable. So they are written in plain English and being executed directly within the virtual machine built on Zerum. That's the name of the software suite. Through these smart contracts, we can also build tokens that can be connected to any type of blockchain or database. The same tools are being built to provide an oracle, sort of software oracle that enables to trace the digital identity of the specific assets. And for the GENTE project, we are talking, of course, about metering information and so metering devices. Next slide, please. I might have some delays here in this big room. Okay. Yes, the software set is called Zerum. It's a virtual machine, and it's built on 3 software stacks. One is the Zerum itself, the virtual machine. The other one is the Restroom VM, which is a software suite that builds on the REST API and so enables to intersect different pieces of software and provide an API for third parties. I have seen the screen, it's frozen. I don't know if this is my issue. Yeah.
Are you wanting to progress to the next? You wanted to progress to the next slide, Alex? Alex?
But actually not.
Okay, we seem to be having some technical issues.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
One second, let me see if I can rebuild the connectivity.
Alex, we can hear you.
Okay, finally, I got you back. Okay.
You can continue.
Okay, that's again the slides. Okay, I'm seeing something again. So I will simply go through. I don't know if you see the slides, but then I do remember them. So the privacy management that we want to establish here is regarding the end-to-end encryption between devices that provides a sort of cryptographic flow of data. And this is minimizing eventual GDPR constraints. Also, you again. So I don't know if you hear me.
We do, Alex. We can still hear you.
Okay, sorry. Okay. So if you can, then I would go to the next slide. I don't see the slide, but I believe this should be the one where we present interface to the end user. That's the prosumer app. The prosumer app is a standard mobile device app, and the app is built mobile first, and the focus of it is to define a proper user experience for the end user. We have to consider the fact that if we want end users to engage with sustainability, we need to provide them an easy way to interact with energy services. So, of course, the first screen in the mobile app is presenting a personal trend. That means the perspective from the prosumer that can consume and produce energy. So you would see the data related to consumption and production. In the screenshot of the app here, you can see data coming from the last week. And this is actually a prosumer, is a user that is producing a lot of energy and consuming less. So as we are taking data from the meter devices on the edge, the consumption is really low because most of the energy produced is consumed, self-consumed, and then the excess energy is pushed into the grid. But because the user is also becoming a member of a community, he can receive also push notification. These notifications are valuable for building engagement within the community. In the next releases, we are also meant to support the end user by providing incentive to build sustainable habits. Don't know if you see the next slide. In case I don't see the slide, but the next would be your energy, your assets. In these other screenshots from the app, we are providing always the perspective from the end user, where he can see and scroll through the data for consumption and production. He can filter through the data, of course, and see what is the consumption of the last period. And he can start to engage with the assets. So the first asset we have here, and the only asset we have in this screenshot, is the metering device. That's a device that is connected to his house, and it can see directly information regarding the asset itself, the meter, but also production and consumption from the point of delivery perspective. Through the app, the user will be able to connect more devices, more assets, like storage boxes, batteries, or, for example, inverters. And then the not present in this slide, the next would be the community perspective. So once the users are engaged one another, they don't see only the point of delivery and the point of view from the end user, but also from the community perspective. Going then to the next slide. For the GENTE project, we are trying to picture what is the interaction we do provide, and it is a sort of purple box that is a sort of middle layer that communicates with databases, like time series databases, relational databases that contain information also on user memberships and on data. And these databases are not provided by us, but in the project are provided also through the RenGen platform. And we are just filtering data coming from the IoT gateway of the RenGen. And then through this middle layer, the Xenon VM, we are able to, first of all, extract all the data, which are presented in the slide as a JSON file, taking the data from meter. And in this specific case, we are just taking grid exported, so that means the energy that is being pushed into the grid. And then from this data, we are providing the interaction with first of all, with a blockchain, a database, a distributed database, and then back to the app through a REST API. In the slide number 9, you will see a screenshot of an example of a smart contract. So the JSON file you were seeing previously is being elaborated through a smart contract, which is really, really small. The contract is calling the influx database, and which is named as influx. And then once the query is processed, the output is saved again back into a dictionary, which is providing the result of the information pooled. So we can divide the part of configuration where we take the data from the smart contracts. And so the smart contract can be easily replicated. In the last slide, you would see a more complex smart contract. In this smart contract, we are also considering the perspective of the energy community, where we collect data from energy consumption, energy production. We make some calculations, so we take the difference between consumption and production in the community. And then we calculate a reward system to provide a sort of incentive to the end user, selling the end user that is selling the energy back to the grid to a specific price, and also receiving an incentive for the energy share. All of these data are, of course, encrypted through a private and public key, and of course we can see the public key and the curve being implemented through the software. With these curves, we are, of course, providing a cryptographic layer to the end user, and then from this we are also connecting to any type of database or blockchain. This is the process we are implementing right now in the GENTE project, and this is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex.
So I don't know how far you came.
Yeah, we got everything.
Thanks.
Thank you for your perseverance. I think we more or less were able to keep up with the slides with your presentation, which you did without being able to see the slides. So quite an achievement. But yeah,
thank you. But I am pretty sure you did.
So thank you for your perseverance, and I apologize to people for the technical issues. So we're going to try again with our
try then with Fabian.
Yes, our next speaker. So I'll just quickly return to the agenda. So this is our final presentation for the afternoon before we open for questions and answers. So I'll hand over to Torbjörn. Torbjörn, is your microphone working now?
It doesn't seem to work. Do you hear Tobian? Okay. Maybe we have to use an additional communication channel. So I will call Tobian on the phone, and then you speak on the phone then.
Let's try that and see whether it works.
Let's try if it's.
I don't think we've got another option.
Okay, Tobian?
Yeah.
Yeah. You need to mute on your side over there, but yeah, it's mute anyway. Okay. So let's try.
Can you mute one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So please go ahead.
Can you? It's an echo. Is it because you have your loudspeaker on to on?
You'll need to turn off your sound on your computer, Torbjörn, but we can hear you fine.
Sorry. Now it's better?
Yes.
Okay, I can't hear you, but on the slides, and I will try to catch up.
Yeah, please go ahead, Tobian.
Okay. So okay. My name is Torbjörn, and I'm working for a company called Energy Save, one of the partners of the GENTE project, and we are dealing with heat pumps. I will explain a little bit about how heat pumps come into the hybrid systems of energy flows. Please step off. Next, yes. This is the slide which is basically showing where we are, but also the last three information boxes in the bottom, 26 markets, but we are dealing with heating, cooling, water and air, 4 functions, so to say. And we are dealing with heat pumps from 6 kilowatts to 1.4 megawatts. Please, next. And we are specialists on hybrid systems, meaning that we connect the heat pumps to many other kinds of heating or energy machines. And that one for me, please. Next picture. Yeah. And this is because the heat pump unique in terms of compatibility. So what with so many different energy flows and so many different energy machines. And basically the heat pump is making our heat pump to go on air to water.
Maybe you need to speak a little bit closer to the phone, Tobian.
Sorry?
Can you speak a little bit closer to the phone? It was not so loud here.
Is it better now? Is it better now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry. So we are working with heat pumps, and they are very compatible with many other energy machines and energy flows. And we take the energy from the air, ambient air, and thanks to the heat pump principle, we get 3 times more energy out from the heat pump than the feeded in electrical energy. Next one, please. This is a picture which is basically showing how a heat pump can be in the center of many energy flows, type of energy. And we are connected very often to district heating. We are of course connected to the electricity grid. We can connect to solar power, to wind power, and we can also work with all kinds of other forces being used for hydrogen, where we connect the wedding with fuel cells, and we get more energy out than the heat pump can create itself, and the fuel cell can create itself. So we are working in hybrid systems to make sure that connecting to houses or fully or and we can interchange with the houses and we close also being we can store energy in water, or we can
Next slide, please.
We connect one of our plugin modules, that's the one to the right. The mobile. This is the 9 kilowatt pair towards the heat pump central, which is mobile, and it's not normally some hours to connect it when you audience. And this one we will use in the GENTE project in the system looking at the slide, the next picture, please. The next picture will show a smart grid system where the smart grid system on the next picture, please, Sam.
Next slide, please, Ben.
Is it possible to change picture?
Yes.
Here. This is a typical smart grid installation where you have the heat pump, 16 heat pumps on the green square in the left corner connected to all kinds of other energy sources, and with a smart optimization of flexibility within this community of buildings, factories, houses, villas, whatever. And if we take the next picture, we will see the object or where we will install such a system together with the GENTE partners. In Sweden, it's the so-called Alingsås pilot. Next picture.
Next picture, Ben.
Next picture. Next picture. Yes, thank you. And here you can see the school. It's a building. On the roof, there is a massive installation of solar power, and we will install this energy central, the plug-in pump module into this school, and we will connect it. The heat pump will be connected to various resources like electrical grid power, district heating power, solar power, and that the heat pump will have an energy storing function with storing water in the 15 liters for water tank. And that will give us the flexibility of the budget with our software, the software, for flexibility purposes to support the grid power. Next picture. Yeah, this is what we want to do here. We will connect to Chalmers and make a number of forecasts, which will be the profile of the building, the usage of the building in terms of consumption and temperatures of the water for heating, for tap water, domestic hot water. So we will do weather forecast and energy price forecast, and then we will go through this flexibility. The balancing services will probably not be tested in this pilot, but the flexibility is yes. So that was all for me. So please, if there are any questions, you will answer, come back to the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tobian. We apologize for the technical issues with the voice, but I hope that it's clear enough for everyone.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our formal presentations today. If there are any questions from those who joined, we'd be happy to answer them. I apologize for the technical issues. We did run a trial session earlier in the week, and we didn't have any problems at that time, but today things have been much more difficult, and it's, as you've seen, we've had some challenges. So I can open the floor now to questions. Are there any questions from anyone in the audience?
I think there is a tool Q&A here.
Yeah. see that Marcus has joined. If you wanted to ask a question, please go ahead.
Thanks, man. I was just asking, I think it's Laura.
Yes.
Yes. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Marcos.
How are you? Long time no see.
Yeah.
I was just wondering about the GENTE toolkit. Just the 3 layers that you had. I think you had a GENTE Federation Manager, a GENTE Community Manager, and I can't remember the 3rd layer.
Yeah, the procurement manager.
Okay.
The procurement level. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the actual owner of the system where they can actually produce. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess in terms of the actual toolkit, is that's an actual deliverable within GENTE? And if so, is it actually available for use outside of the GENTE project?
This toolkit is conformed by different tools.
Yeah.
And in this case, they will be available depending on the final exploitation strategy that is defined. In some cases, some tools or parts may be open source, and other ones would be not open source and exploitable on the market. Yeah.
Okay. But at the moment, as a toolkit, what form does it come in? Is it a digital toolkit, or is it simply a methodology, a process, or how does it work?
I would say that the main tool is an IoT platform that includes some optimization algorithms inside, and also all the communications with all the different assets.
Okay. I might follow up with you again about that. Okay. Thank you.
And Marcus would be happy to follow up with you on that if there's a particular area that you're interested in. I mean, is there a particular? Are you interested in the management platform, for example, or are you interested in the control algorithms? Is there a specific aspect that you were thinking of?
It's just that we are just finishing a project called React. And again, it has 3 pilots. They're all islands, if you like, but I could see a lot of similar software, hardware being involved in your project. But I like the focus on formalizing how you actually can hand over the project, I would hope, within an energy community so that they can take ownership. And if you want to hand over, what kind of entity supports the community after these projects. So we're really trying to figure out how to support the community in taking ownership now of the installed energy assets, and how much of the React platform is really necessary for them to survive in continuing to use the assets, particularly to do with management and maintenance.
Yep, and just to add to what Laura said, we're in the process at the moment of trying to map and understand the exploitation pathways for the project, and it will depending on the technology. It'll depend on to the level of which we'd like to exploit or able to exploit the different technologies. Certainly, the ambition at the start of the project, prior to the project in the proposal writing stage, was to create some very practical tools and processes and methodologies that communities could adopt. So this wasn't just about theoretical research that would stay on the shelf, as it were. It was the ambition was that a community would be able to access different parts of this toolkit and apply them. Things like demand forecasting using AI. It's not easy for a general community to be able to access and apply that. That needs to be integrated into hardware or software in some way. So exactly how we can bring those out of the project still needs to be defined. But technical guidelines and methodologies and also practical software-based tools. We hope that these will be outcomes of the project. as John said at the start, we're halfway through. We're now starting to look at those exploitation pathways. We hope that in the next couple of months we'll have a clearer idea about that.
So Ben, is this a 3-year project or?
It's a 2-year project. So yeah, we're
2 year. So you have a year done. Okay.
But it'd be really interesting to talk to you about that and to learn from your experience. It sounds like you're ahead of us in terms of thinking about the exploitation pathways and how you bring these things out into the open. So I'd be really pleased for us to have a project bilateral discussion where we can learn from you and look at what you've tried and what you're experimenting with and the challenges that you've had, and to look at how we could steer our exploitation pathways to support the practical needs of energy communities in future.
We'd very much we'd very much welcome that discussion.
Great.
Because
okay.
we're going from a pilot now to what we regard as an energy community ownership and continuous taking what we have and at least being able to empower the particular community to operate the system at different levels. So first, that all the systems, the renewable energy systems, are working, that the community is able to communicate with the main owner on the manager. That's why I was wondering about a federation manager as opposed to a community manager. So it's a community manager in this case. So because we believe if we do this really well for the next 12 months after the project, we will encourage more people on the island to invest in renewable energy technologies, but they could become part of the actual community. And I spoke with Laura's colleague Ivan Aranda last week in Greece, and is trying to understand how to scale the situation. So for us, credibility and confidence of the owners, of the citizens, is crucial in this. And we're at the end of REACT now, and we really want to see a way to continue, either through additional proposals, national funding, say in Ireland, for example. But I like the look of this, so I just want to talk to you a bit more about exactly what way you've approached the slide we're looking at here that Laura presented. Okay.
Yeah, Marcus, if I'm not wrong, tomorrow are you going to present something regarding React project on the? Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting for us to follow that presentation.
Great. It won't be me specifically presenting, but yeah, we are presenting React. Yeah. So yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Sounds like you're already in touch, Laura and Marcus. So if you're able to coordinate a meeting between our consortium and Marcus and the React consortium, that would be brilliant.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Thank you.
Super. Thanks for the question. Good. Are there any other points? Okay, if there are any other questions or comments, we can bring the session to a close. We are available on LinkedIn, email, get in touch via our website, or various researchers. You can search for us on the internet and get in touch. Our profiles are also available on the Meetup, the Hop-in platform. So if you're interested in learning more, please get in touch. Otherwise, thank you very much for those who joined this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your perseverance, given the technical issues, and thank you also to our speakers.
Yeah. Thank you, Em.
Very much.
Thank you all. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes.